Our modified fiscal and budgetary strategy. That was approved in July of 14. So previously you had been receiving a monthly report, which you currently are still receiving, only it's coming via Dropbox. So you'll be receiving this quarterly financial report every 3 months beginning July 1st. We don't have a formal financial presentation this evening, but we will be presenting a more detailed overview of the financials district-wide at the January board meeting. So I wanted to mention in other financial news that last week the Office of the Texas State Comptroller announced that Fort Bend ISD received the 5-star rating for their Comptroller Annual Financial Allocation Study for Texas, and this is known as the FAST report. This is a study that examines both academic performance and financial efficiencies. The 5-star rating indicates the strongest relative academic achievement combined with the lowest relative spending. So only 46 districts across the state of Texas received this award. It's only less than 4% of all of Texas, so we're really proud to have achieved this. And at this time, I can answer any questions that you may have on the financials.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. Thank you for that report, and that's very nice for that announcement for that award, so thank you very much for sharing that with us. Do we have any questions on the financial report? Okay, well, thank you very much.
All righty, thank you, Dina. Next up, we have a report on our district performance related to the College Board, PSAT, SAT, and AP exams, along with our district report on the ACT and plan, kind of the preparation exam that our freshmen take related to the ACT exam. Dr. Lupita Garcia, our Executive Director of Special Programs, is going to present that along with Stephen Shields, our Director of College and Career Readiness.
Thank you. Good evening, President James and members of the board, and Dr. Dupree. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you some really exciting and encouraging information. We're going to be discussing a little bit of data with you tonight. And like I said, some of it is very exciting and encouraging, but while other pieces of it remind us that we still have some challenges and places to go and growth to attain. So you want to go ahead and... Okay, we have a continuum of assessments that we covered with you when we went over the CCR, the College Career Readiness District Plan. And I say continuum because it's really a developmental assessments that we administer to students, and these are the 5 assessments that we will be focusing on tonight. The numbers you see beneath each one is where we administer that assessment to all students, and you'll hear a little bit more about these in just a minute. We're going to begin with the plan, and we're beginning the presentation in a developmental way, where we start in the 9th grade and where we finish with the seniors in terms of assessments. So I'll start with the plan, and that'll be followed by the PSAT with Steve Shields, who, as Dr. Dupree mentioned, is over college and career readiness now. Do you want me to click, or do you want to click? You can click. Please click. The plan is similar to the PSAT. You know, the PSAT is a predictor for college readiness. It's an indicator for college readiness on the SAT. As you know, SAT and ACT are the 2 college exams that are used in the college admissions process. That's not the only thing they use, but they are the 2. And so the plan is like a PSAT. And so it's also gives us very valuable information. We administer this in the 9th grade. I'm giving you data on last year's 9th graders. This year's 9th graders took the test in October, and we haven't gotten the results back, but we should be getting them pretty soon, and we'll be able to start following some trends. The ACT scale metric is on 1 through 36. If you've ever had any children or know of anyone that's ever taken it, it is on a scale of 1 through 36 within each of the subtests, English, math, reading, and science, whereas the plan is on a metric of 1 through 32. Okay, it's cut back. The college, what you see there, where it says CRS, is college readiness score. And for the core, the benchmark at the 9th grade for students, for us to be able to say that they are college ready in English, is a 14. And and our students who scored at or above the 14 benchmark was 63%. And then for mathematics, the benchmark is an 18, reading is a 17, and science is a 19. It will, of course, for the ACT, as you'll see our scores in a little bit, it's higher. But in the ninth grade, a 14 would mean you're college ready. That means that 63% of our ninth graders who are 10th graders this year were ready in English. And so basically, I like to look at it, we give it in the fall of, in October, the fall of their ninth grade year. So we've got the spring of their ninth grade year, the 10th grade year, the 11th grade year, and 1 semester of their senior year, which is equivalent to 3 years for us to get them to stay on target, increase their strengths, maintain where they are if that's what needs to happen, and also get the other 37% ready, for example, in English. Okay?
So in talking about the PSAT, again, in ninth grade, they took the plan, and now in 10th grade, all of our 10th graders take the PSAT. And one of the things that I think is important about 10th graders taking the PSAT is that it gives them valuable exposure to the SAT, and it also gives us awesome AP potential data, which we'll talk more about. So if we look at some of the positives, and these positives aren't listed up there, but some of the positives that I see in Fort Bend ISD is that all of our demographics, all of our students scored above the national and the state average in the PSAT, so all of our 10th graders. And then each demographic scored above their demographic peer in the state and the nation. So those are very positive. Some of the things that we want to point out that are areas of challenge for us and areas of concern are, I'm going to use my little pointer here, is the flat, or would it be easy to point up here? Okay. Is the flat trend. So that's one of the challenges, and this is something that College Board has seen nationwide, is that, you know, in states in the nation that that it's really flatlined, and so that's one of the reasons why they're beginning the redesign in the SAT. And those of you that have 10th graders, this is going to be the first class that takes the new SAT as the PSAT next fall. So they'll practice in the fall, and then they'll take the new SAT in the spring. So that's exciting. Another thing that I want to point out, and this is something that for each one of these assessments that we're going to address, is that there's a gap. There is definitely a gap between our demographics. Even though we're happy that they're all scoring above their state and national peers, there's pretty significant gaps. As you can see, if you look at the Asian population in blue, and the Caucasian population is a very light kind of beige that doesn't show up very well. But those, and you can see those are maintained pretty flat, but you can see the difference between those and our African American and Hispanic students, which are in the dark green for African American and in the lighter green for the Hispanics, that there is a significant gap in achievement. So if we look at the district mean, oh darn it, back up. Okay, so if we look at the district mean of 42.3%, we can see that our African Americans and our Latino students scored 4 points under there, and then 10 points below our Asian population. So that's something, as we look at this data, that we, you know, with our college and career readiness plan, with our focus for the target measure number 1 on equity and access, and also our performance target number 3, which talks about achievement. One of our big focuses is to address this gap, which we're going to see in the rest of the assessments as well. So PSAT 10th grade, it's a similar story, a very similar graph. Actually, we still see the flatline trend, but we see the gap widening even in math between the Asian population and our Black and Hispanic. So there's a 14-point gap. So we would like to, while we continue to support the you know, just the achievement of our Asian students, that we want to just bridge that gap and bring our other students up there as well. One thing I want to point out, and we're going to see some similar things with the PSAT, but one of the things as far as participation in the PSAT is that this is the first class that all of the students took the PSAT. So in the past, we've had students pay for it, like the 11th graders pay for it, and so students were self-selected, or they decided, I want to go take this test, I'm going to pay. So in the past 4 years, we had approximately, and it was pretty much the same every year, we had approximately 2,000 students of our juniors that chose to do that. But now this past year, we funded the PSAT for the 11th graders. So we had over 5,000 students take it. And so as you can see, there's definitely like a decline this year. And so, but we're actually pretty encouraged about the decline. We expected with twice as many students testing, that the decline would be even greater. But even with this, all the students testing, they did exceed, again, both the state and national average. It went down from previous achievement, but it still is scoring above the state and nation. And we see a similar trend in mathematics. And again, I just want to point out that the gap that exists, and that's something that want to highlight once more. Okay. And so, as I mentioned just a bit ago, something critical that we get from the PSAT is AP potential. So students that take the PSAT, both their 10th and 11th grade, and this data is taken from a report from College Board that's called the Right to Rigor Report. And this is actually the first year that they've released data on a graduating class. And so this is the class of 2014. And if we look at the yellow line, those are students that demonstrated AP potential in 10th and 11th grade and also took the corresponding AP exam. So for example, for AP English, these students, based on their PSAT, were demonstrated to have AP potential. And actually what the AP potential means is that College Board, if a student achieves this particular threshold, that the student will have a 60% likelihood of getting a 3, 4, or 5 on the AP exam. And so that it's research-based. And one of the things that we want to highlight is, first of all, this is amazing data for us to have. And they have it by every student. We can look at every single student and see what kind of AP potential they have. So it's awesome data just for individual students. And students also receive that information that they have AP potential. But it's also just really helpful for us to see, when we get to see this graduating class, and we're going to see some great AP growth in just a little bit, but we're still leaving a lot of AP potential on the table. And we can see in the district-wide, there's 53% of our students that had AP potential took the exam, which that's good. But then we had 47% of students that had AP potential but did not take the exam, okay? And the other thing I just want to highlight with this is that our African American students and our Latino students, especially our Latino students in AP English, only 30% of those students that had AP potential took the exam. So we had 70% of our Latino students who had AP potential but didn't take the exam. And so it goes on, and we just want to show you, it's pretty similar from, this is students that showed AP mathematics potential. And so this one of the things I just want to highlight is that the African Americans had 30% took the exam that had potential, so there's 70% that did not. And then we see a similar thing with science. And so the reason why we wanted to show you this AP potential was, this is data that we have used to help increase our AP numbers, which we're about ready to share. But more importantly, you can see that there's a lot for us to do. We're going to share really shortly some exciting growth, but there's also, we need to look no further than this AP potential report to really find students that not only to take the exam, but that are going to succeed.
Okay. So as Steve has mentioned, we've had an increase in enrollment, which I'm going to go over this chart briefly with you. Really, we attribute that to three main things. One is the College Career Readiness Plan. There was huge awareness about what that plan was about. Equity and access. It's got all those targeted benchmarks about achievement, about enrollment, et cetera. Secondly, the AP potential. Last year, this is the year before last for enrollment, and then this year, for the past 2 years that you've seen there, it was a non-negotiable for the counselors to work with their students upon making course selections and to talk to them if they had the potential to be able, we used it as a potential that if you took this AP course, you could make a 3 or higher, in the exam. So that means you have the potential to be successful in the course, really is what it means. So Some campuses went as far as to design some beautiful letters in both English and Spanish that were sent to the parents, where it said, "Congratulations, you have the potential to be successful in the following courses, and we strongly encourage you to enroll in them." So naturally, the awareness level was huge. The third part of this is attributed to our AVID program. Because of our AVID program, we have a great, strong partnership with Rice University, the College Board, the College Board, Rice University, and AVID, all three of them, they have what's called Team University. And 7 of our high schools have AVID. And what Team University is it requires that a principal, an assistant principal, and a counselor and a teacher be a team where they discuss and disaggregate the data about AP. So they meet with them and they talk to them about all these little pieces of data, what it means, and teach them about how to use this data to enhance instruction and increase enrollment. So those three are the major things. And like I said, AP potential that Steve just covered was incredible. As you can see, this is when I say non-distinct student AP in course enrollment, this does not include foreign language or any of the electives. We're just talking about all the AP courses that were taken in the 4 core. And it's listed by high school. And in 2011-12, the total number was 12,199 AP courses were taken. This past year, 17,825 courses were taken. That is a huge increase, equivalent to 46% over the last years of students enrolling in the AP courses. Why is this really important? You know, and we really feel like we hear colleges tell us over and over that, yes, you know, if you make a 3 or 4 or 5, some universities, some colleges are going to use some type of college credit, which is great for parents, money in their pocket, savings, etc. But they still tell us that kids who take AP courses, whether they make a 1 or a 2 in the exam, whether they make a C in the course, it's much better, they say, to have had physics with a C than never to have had physics at all. It's much better to have had these courses, regardless of this course, because these kids are really prepared for the kind of rigor they're going to face when they get to college. So these numbers are really quite impressive, and I feel a huge initiative on the part of many people, curriculum and instruction, the campus initiatives, et cetera, from the AVID campuses. Okay.
And this increase in AP course enrollment has led to a very significant increase in our district AP exams. So over the last 5 years, we've seen a 23.4% increase in our AP exams, but 16% of this increase was just this past year. So that is extremely significant. And what I also want to point out is that our AP performance, which is exams of 3, 4, or 5, has also kept pace with that. That's actually increased by 18%. So both our AP participation and our AP performance has increased by 16 and 18% respectively. And one of the things that we're really excited about is that this growth was led by our African American and Latino population. And in the last 5 years, we had seen the previous 4 years, we had seen a slight decline in both African American and Latino populations. And then just this past year, we had a very significant increase of 42.1% with African Americans and 19.1% for Hispanic. And then we can also see that our Asian population continued to grow, that they also enjoyed a double-digit 11.3% increase. And so these are just some demographic wins. And with our focus on equity and access, we were extremely pleased that our African American and Latino population, which traditionally has been underrepresented in AP exams, were leading that growth.
In terms of taking a closer look at how many of the kids are actually taking the exams, in 2013-14, about 50% of our kids enrolled in AP courses took the corresponding AP exam. So about half of them are testing and half are not. It's important to also note that over the past 2 years, you just saw the chart I showed you, over the past 2 years we increased enrollment by 6,000. 6,000 more courses were taken, but only 1,600 more exams were administered. So we're still looking at this is a challenge. We'd like for more of our students to take the AP exam for several reasons. One is it does teach them how to learn for a huge amount of information, an assessment that is very comprehensive, and it prepares them for those type of exams that they're going to have to be taken in college. Secondly, whereas it benefits the students do not have to report their AP scores to anyone. It can just be their score for their own use. The colleges don't have to see them. But for us, it's very important because then we can look at where we might have some gaps in instruction, where our curriculum may not be being delivered as well as it should be, and we did notice that in our AP audit that we had for some of our campuses. The team that came by and saw this, in some cases, they felt they were not seeing a lot of AP strategies. So how can we find out where our weaknesses are and where our strengths are is by looking at how some of these kids do. So it benefits the student because they may potentially get credit. It also benefits them to prepare them for very, very rigorous exams that they have to take in college, but it benefits us as well. And as you can see, the AP exam participation by campus ranged anywhere from 17.8% of the kids in an AP class taking the exam to 69%, giving us that average. I guess I don't have the right. Flipped back to the wrong page. Okay, well, I can just look at it with y'all. This one right here is talking about our district AP performance. If you notice up there, it's got the number, it's the district AP performance desegregated by campus, and this is the number of exams where there was a 3, a 4, or a 5. So Clements, for example, had 2,129 exams with 3, 4, and 5s, and that represented 30% of our 3, 4s, and 5s in the district. Okay, so this is district-wide. So if you were to add the columns 30% all the way down to 0.08%, you would get close to or a little over 100%. So Clements had 30% representation in 3, 4s, and 5s. Austin had 19%, and Dulles had 16%. Now those three are 65% of our 3, 4s, and 5s. Those three campuses kind of carried the heavy weight, okay? And that is our challenge as well, because what we want is we want these other campuses where they had 8% of the kids, 7% of the kids, 6% of the kids, is to bring those up as well, up to a higher level. It's not a zero-sum game. Everybody can rise to that level. So that gives you an idea of that opportunities for improvement.
So now we're going to look at the SAT, then we'll end with the ACT. And again, thinking about the continuum, we looked at in 9th grade, the students took the plan. In 10th and 11th, they take the PSAT. We get some essential AP data for them to take AP classes, and then they move to the kind of the finale, which is the SAT and the ACT. So one of the things I want to point out with participation that isn't on this graph is that in the last year, we only increased by 0.5%. So that's an area of growth that I would like to highlight, that we, over the last 5 years have grown about 5.6%, but we didn't show significant growth as we did in the AP program. And I think that when we have about 3,700 of our seniors taking the exam, that we have a lot of area to improve. And also one of the things that, as far as participation, that I want to point out is that we saw a decline in our Latino students taking the SAT this past year, and it's our only demographic that's not representative of the district demographic. So we see an equal amount of African Americans in the district that are taking the SAT, but the Latino population, it's not representative of the district population. So again, to look at this graph, and I don't want to be redundant, but it is very similar to the PSAT. And again, I would like to point out the positives that we again, that Fort Bend ISD did outperform both state and national averages in the SAT. And even though I said that earlier, I think it's important to emphasize again, I think that's significant. And also our demographics did as well. And again, we have the flat trend that we're also going to see with the ACT, that we've seen very little movement in our scores. And so it's something that Dr. Garcia is going to talk about, is just how to address that, because we feel like when we've seen that line that there needs to be something disruptive done to get those scores in an uptrending direction. And so, and again, we're excited about kind of the fresh start of the new SAT, and that one of the purposes of the new SAT is to be more transparent about, when a College Board's goal is to be more transparent about the questions and also how to prepare for those questions, and to have that all students would have access to high quality test prep. So they're going to make the Khan Academy free for all students, and we're looking forward to using some of that. So one of the things I heard College Board say is that they don't want districts to have to decode like what's kind of the secret of the SAT or to improve the scores. And so we're looking forward to the transparency and some of the resources that it will be available to help prepare our students more effectively. And we also, just want to let you see the critical math. It's a similar story with a flatline trend. And we also, again, see the achievement gap in performance. And now Dr. Garcia is going to conclude with the ACT and some remarks.
Okay. Our ACT, as you can see there, you have 5 years of our ACT scores. One of the things that is worth noting is that this district has traditionally been an SAT district. More kids were encouraged to take the SAT or took it on their own as opposed to the ACT. And for the last 2 or 3 years, we've really been making a big push for the students to take the ACT, because we find that some students may do very well on one test, not well on the other. And so they really need to take both tests so they can really sell themselves to the colleges in the best manner possible. For example, one test you're penalized for guessing, on the other one you're not. So we need to teach them those strategies. And also, the ACT has 4 subtests, whereas the SAT, well, the new SAT as well, will only have 2. And the SAT has always been known as a power, I won't call it, well, I shouldn't say IQ test, but it's a power thinking test, whereas the ACT is more aligned to the curriculum we teach. And so some kids tend to do better than others on one or the other, or equally as well. So those are our scores. What's a little discouraging, if you notice the number of students that tested, 1588, 1564, 1600. We finally hit 1700 this past year. But in comparison to 3,800 kids taking the SAT, I mean, that's 3,800 of our kids in the same year took the SAT compared to 1,704. So we would like to see 3,800 take the SAT and 3,800 take the ACT. And so that is one of our big goals. We've got to explain to these kids and really get it through them that it's not another Saturday sitting there bringing your pencils with your sweaty palms drudgery kind of thing. This is a great opportunity for you to be able to sell yourself on one or the other. So that's kind of the slide that shows our mean scores. The next slide on the ACT, if you will notice, a while ago I mentioned that 14 in the college, in the English, 14 in the 9th grade is the benchmark at college readiness. Well, college readiness on the ACT is an 18. So that we have a 14 and we continue working with them and up in the ante and assessing them to get to that 18. And then the math is 22, and the college, the social sciences is 22, and 23 for the science or the biology. And that chart just shows you a comparison of how we're doing on the ACT compared to the national and the state average. But I don't feel we test enough students on the ACT. We really need to, I think both Steve and I do, we need to test more students. Finally, you've heard a lot of you've seen a lot of data, you've heard a lot about the 5 assessments, so you're probably wondering, well, why? Why are we testing kids again so much? And are we, we're paying for the plan and we're paying for the PSAT, so are we getting a good bang for our buck? Are we getting a good return for our investment? And I'm going to say that in the past, I would say no, we weren't getting a good return for our investment, because this is what was in the past and this is what's expected now and the non-negotiable. In the past, the kids got their PSAT scores. Some of them wanted them immediately. If they arrived in December, they didn't want to go for the holidays without having those scores, and they didn't care if they didn't get interpreted, just hand me my scores, you know, kind of thing. And then others, we've now standardized it to where they have to wait till we return from the holidays. And the reason for that is because we can't just hand them the scores. We've got to really go over those scores with them and explain to them what they mean and where their weaknesses are, where their strengths, and what they can work towards. Also in the past, so we handed the scores to the kids and we would interpret them. We would also have some parent nights where we talked about it, and that was about it. But we didn't use them to inform instruction, and that's really what's real critical. You know, the new us, what's expected of us is a lot of collaboration. We've got to really collaborate with curriculum and instruction. We've got to collaborate with our associate principals on the campuses. We've got to get them to understand what the desegregated data means. We've got them to understand and to work with the teachers, and we model for them what we want them to go back to the campuses and model. If 70% of the kids miss number 2 in this math part, there's got to be something wrong with number 2 or something wrong with us the way we're teaching number 2. Or if 30% or more kids, then we've got to only got it right, then we've got to look at those to see if we're aligned, if we're teaching it the right way where kids really understand it. Okay, so I think we're going to get a lot of bang for our buck. Plus, I think the facts of this testing is so important. You know, I was a really bad history student, but I will say that I always remember a quote from Winston Churchill, and that I've never forgotten. And it said, "We must look at the facts because the facts are looking at us." And you know, I've thought about that a lot, and these are our facts. These are the facts that we have to look at, because if we don't look at our facts, we're just simply in denial. And denial is a great sanctuary to be in, but it's not a great thing for kids. So this is why it's important, and I think we're getting a big bang for our buck. So at this point, we'll entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia and Mr. Shields. That was very nice, and thank you for bringing us all this data and even more electronically so we can think about it and understand it and try to understand where our kids are. So thank you for that. Any of the trustees have questions? Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, ma'am. On your statistics concerning the AP exams, do they include exams that were just physically taken on campus, or does that also include online?
No, our exams, the students don't take the AP exam online. They're just the ones that have taken it with us, but they also did not include any of the electives. It was just the 4 core. We administered a lot more exams, but we were just focusing on math, science, social studies.
Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, if I could add to that. So the students that take the course, the AP course online, they can choose to take the AP exam in May. So in May, all the students test throughout the nation on the same day and time. And so some of them, you know, choose to take the exam and some don't. So if they do choose the exam, then they will be represented in this data.
I guess I should have rephrased my question a little better. So do some of the statistics on courses taken, do those reflect courses that were taken online or at other campuses or whatever?
That's a very good question. And no, they don't.
Yeah, I would say no too.
They
That's a
don't,
good-
because I'll tell you how we got the data. One of the difficulties with getting data that's really meaningful to us is to know what kids were in what course and how many took it, et cetera. But we don't share our data, enrollment data, with College Board, so the only thing we get from them is how many exams were taken and what the scores were. So then we have to look at where enrollment was. So we pull this data from our Skyward of number of kids enrolled each year and number of exams given in that particular. So no, it didn't include that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mrs. Tassan.
So just to follow up with Mr. Rosenthal's question, so how do you said that we're using this data now to inform instruction. So how are we doing that at the campus level? How are we making sure that this trickles down to the campus level and making sure, I mean, do we know where these students went to school so that we can see if it maybe was a particular issue at a campus, or is it, or do we not have that?
Yes, we do.
specificity?
And let me start with, you really actually have a two-part question
Yes.
here. So let me explain that. One of the other initiatives that we have this year is that every associate principal at the high school has been designated as the AP instructional leader. So when we share the disaggregated data with them, and we're working very closely with the Department of School Leadership as well, and the assistant superintendents, is for them to go back and meet with each of the departments, the English, the math, the science department. So they have a role. The counselors have a role in encouraging kids and keeping kids in those classes. The teachers have a role, so that everybody has a role. So that is one new thing that we're doing to inform instruction, is having one person that we have on a listserv that we can send information to, that we can actually designate to go to some college workshops, because there are a lot of AP coordinator workshops that are available to help them deal with this data. Secondly, you said, how do we know how they're doing in college? We were going to be presenting to you 5-year trend data on the National Student Clearinghouse, which is how many kids have gone to college and how long it's taken them, 2-year, 4-year, et cetera, enrollment, how many stayed, recidivism, et cetera. But they had to do some of their data, and we just got it, last week?
Yeah, last week, Thursday.
So we could have brought you just 4 years, but I think it's more significant to show 5 years, because most kids nowadays are, we'd have a higher percentage that maybe finishing a bachelor's degree in 5 years. So that will be another presentation.
Okay. So how are we having this trickle down to the middle school level with AP courses? Are we doing anything, because we have kids obviously in middle school, that some that do take AP courses, some that don't.
Right.
My concern is, especially having one that's in middle school right now, is if they are not taking the AP courses in middle school, it can impact whether or not they're prepared for an AP course at the high school level. So how are we addressing that?
Well, we began addressing this first by having a change of culture and mindset about who, quote, is allowed to go into pre-AP and who isn't. Because we're not gatekeepers, and College Board is all about equity and access. So we began by renaming the courses instead of honors to pre-AP in every subject matter, because pre-AP defines the rigor of the course, and honors defines the kind of kid that goes into a course. Are you an honors student? Well, most kids would tell you, especially minorities, no, I'm not an honors student. It doesn't mean you're not pre-AP material. So we began by changing the culture and the mindset about what pre-AP is. Also changing the mindset and the culture that it's not just for GT kids. Pre-AP is for everybody, okay? And so we don't use matrix or rubrics to decide who gets to get in and who doesn't. If a kid is willing to take that challenge and work hard, that's perfectly all right, and many of them do quite well. So one way to do that, and we've added this coming year, we will have pre-AP in the 6th grade. We've started pre-AP in the 7th and 8th grade, but I think the history in this district, and it precedes me, is that we had some 6th grades in the elementary campuses, so that was a little difficult to do. So now that our 6th graders are all in middle school, we will have pre-AP in the 4 core. And in some of the core areas like mathematics, it's not like pre-AP, certain pre-AP like algebra, for example. It's not grade level specific. It can be when you are ready to take it. So if a 6th grader is ready to take it, or a 7th grader, and it shows that they're developmentally and cognitively ready, then we are allowing that to happen. So that is how it's trickling down. But I would say of all the things that have trickled down, and there's quite numerous, I think the one big one is that we are not going to be gatekeepers, and we're going to allow these kids to get in. And even last week we had someone call. They were wanting to know who is going to provide them with the filler. What was it called? The filler matrix.
Yeah.
And I had never heard of a filler matrix, and I was not here, and I said, "What? What's a filler matrix?" And so they said, well, it's a matrix where you put kids who might be capable and you kind of fill in the classes with them. And Dr. Hill said, I don't want that word used ever again, But anyway, so.
I'm sure.
And so I said, I'd never heard of a filler matrix, and I'm an old timer, So we said, we're not talking about matrices, and we're not talking about hoops, and we're not talking about the green eye. If you have a green eye and a blue eye, you can take this course, but you can't take this one. Nothing like that. So I think that's one of the biggest things, tearing away those barriers, really.
Well, I am really glad to hear that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add, because I think it's really critical, is that we have a new position, as you may be aware of, the coordinator of advanced academics. And that's a position that we have not had in the past, and part of their charge is to make sure that the curriculum, first of all, on the AP level, is aligned from Clement's to Bush to on down. So, but also that there's vertical alignment, that we're making sure that the pre-AP curriculum in middle school is actually aligned and preparing them for the AP curriculum in high school. And so those two things, both the consistency in the curriculum in the AP courses, but also the alignment with the pre-AP courses to make sure that there's adequate preparation. So I think in addition to the just opening the enrollment to AP courses, the equity and access, but also that position to help with the curriculum. And that's like really her focus is on the curriculum. And so I think with both, I would say, and there's
Yes,
probably
it-
parents that can attest to this, is that I think we're at an infancy stage in all of this. And I think we've seen some
Great
exciting
gains,
growth.
though.
But I think we're just beginning this journey.
The name of the AP coordinator, Advanced Academics Coordinator, is Georgette Bubar, and she reports to Susan Brodakis, but she works with us all the time. She's in my office or Steve's office all the time, and she was with us all afternoon looking at our data with us. And one of the things that she said, and she kind of has to kind of rein me in a little bit because I kept saying, yes, but the AP potential says they're capable of taking the AP course. She says, yes, but it's not based on that. It's based on the AP potential on the kids who took the PSAT, whether they can make a 3 or 4. And as we're talking about it, she says, Lupita, you can't say that all those kids should have been, were in the course and didn't take it, because a lot of them are not, are in the course but are not taking the exam. And as I go around the campuses talking to principals and having some really great conversations with them, they are telling me that they have some teachers whose kids have never taken an AP exam. Now that's distressing. So that's a challenge.
Well,
That we have to look at. Again, one of those, we need to look at those facts.
I am glad to hear that you guys are opening the enrollment, because I have a daughter that's in pre-AP in middle school, and I was confused by some of the eligibility requirements and whether or not, now we have a school where the principals had this open door, look, anybody that wants to try can do it, so we were very fortunate to have that for many years. And she did, and did very well, but then we got to, so she took pre-AP in 6th grade, was all A's, maybe 1 B student. We get to 7th grade, and she automatically doesn't qualify for pre-AP again. So, yeah. So it was very confusing to see, okay, I've got a student that makes an A in pre-AP in 6th grade, and she's not automatically eligible in 7th grade. So it seemed like there was this disconnect between whether or not a student was actually prepared for a pre-AP course and whether or not we found them eligible. So
Yeah, you almost want to ask, did we make her dumber or smarter?
yeah, that's what I'm just, I was, and part of it was because we went back to the 5th grade scores.
Yeah.
We skipped
No.
over because we didn't have certain scores for 6, so it was a little confusing to me. So I'm glad to hear that we're going to be sort of opening the doors for them.
I'm not going to say that we're going to be 100% there, but every time we hear about something like this, we immediately respond to it.
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that. And I'm also, I hope that when we're doing curriculum, we are looking at rigor and not just more work faster, because that's kind of what we've had that experience ourselves as well. And
Parents get
you can
lost.
tell the classes where we are getting more rigor and it is benefiting the students versus just we're just speeding through and, really killing the kids with the work instead of enhancing what they know academically. So I appreciate that. This was a good presentation, so thank you both.
Thank you, Mrs. Hassan. Mrs. Bailey?
Yeah, can you just explain again on the pre-AP offerings at 6th grade?
There will be,
following.
they'll be in the 4 core, pre-AP math and English and social studies and science.
Okay, so we have that now, really, don't we?
We
Yeah.
have pre-AP in high school and 7th and 8th grade. It's honors. I think
Right.
they might have been
There's-
honors,
it's-
yeah.
They have pre-AP.
We have
Right.
it
I know it
advanced.
where my campus is for math, for all of that, so that's really.
Math has always kind
They
of
call
been
it
the
G-
one
well,
that
They call
we,
it GT, so what you're going to do is you're going to change it to pre-AP?
well, GT is not, how can I explain this? Pre-AP as a curriculum for GT students in and of itself is not enough. I mean, pre-AP is for everybody. GT, we're really working on that, as well as a plan to review our GT program. And I certainly will, if Ginger here would like to speak to that, to the Gifted and Talent program, because we have a lot of work to do there as well. But we can't just say that the way we serve our gifted kids is through pre-AP. and AP, because that's not enough for those children, because pre-AP and AP is for everyone.
Okay, so if we're going to start offering pre-AP in 6th grade,
We still have GT.
and we're still going to have GT, so on their point system, I guess we really don't worry about their points unless it's a high school course, right?
Right. Mhm.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not
And we don't-
inflating again.
No, we
on
don't
that.
weight GT, we weight
Right.
AP and dual credit, right. Mhm.
Right,
Now, and that
okay.
it's not, unless it's a credit-bearing, high school credit-bearing course, it would not make a difference. in
So
the-
what I'm hearing is that we're going to revamp GT a little bit, and then we're going to have a pre-AP, and then we're going to have, let's say, for example,
Simultaneously.
math, yeah. And then we'll have the regular.
Right. Mhm.
So we'll actually be getting our 3 levels back.
Yes.
No.
What do you mean? We have on grade level, and pre-AP and GT.
Let me come up. What we have currently is in 6th grade, we don't have pre-AP. We have regular on-level courses, and we have what we call honors, which should be called pre-AP. It's modeled after that. But several years back, when they implemented a 6th grade program in some of our elementary campuses, it was decided at that time, prior to any of us being here, that they would move away from the pre-AP track and call it honors, and they felt it was more applicable and they could cover more bases with it. But we disagree. We want it to be called pre-AP and treat it as such and embrace the College Board pre-AP strategies, because the whole purpose of pre-AP is to prepare a student for advanced academics in an AP course. So what you'll see next year is the honors label will go away. It'll be called pre-AP, which will be like a coherent sequence to prepare them for 7th grade, 8th grade, and subsequent courses. What we currently do with GT is the model that this district has used in years past, is we satisfy meeting the needs of our gifted students in the pre-AP, AP path. But as Dr. Garcia says, that could be debated, because anyone can get in. You don't have to have an eligibility of GT, and that's what we're preaching, is we don't want there to be any gatekeeping, and you don't have to be GT to get into this path. So another task at hand with our GT program evaluation is to look at that. Are we meeting the needs of our gifted learners in a pre-AP, AP? Because as I expressed in our one of my recent board presentations was that we have to do a better job of differentiation. But right now, we tell the teachers to take the kids in a heterogeneous group of mix of kids, some with eligibility, some without, and to differentiate the process of learning, the pace of learning, and the ultimate outcome of the product. But we're eager. Yes, we're eager to do that program evaluation, because we think there's opportunity for growth there. We think we can do more for our gifted learner, because a gifted learner is different from a high-achieving learner, which is typically the ones in those classes.
Correct. So I was just saying where my son
So
goes
when you
to
said the
middle
3
s-
levels, there won't be. So if you're in
Okay.
6th grade, you will be either in a pre-AP classroom or a non-pre-AP, just as on-level, regular curriculum, TEKS-based.
Or a
state
GT.
mandated.
No,
No,
you-
GT
you-
right now is in the pre-AP classes. That's how we're meeting their needs.
So it's differentiated instruction
Correct.
within the pre-AP classroom. And theoretically, you could have differentiated instruction within the regular classroom.
Correct.
also.
Correct, and that's our expectation. So in
Okay.
a pre-AP 6th grade math class, you may have 10 kids with an eligibility of GT, they've been identified, and the rest of them are just high-achieving students looking to receive that curriculum in a pre-AP classroom.
Right, because I think that's most of the 6th graders where my son attends, is they're just advanced, so they're in the GT advanced class,
Right.
though they're not identified GT.
Right, and we have a cluster model in this district. We don't pull kids out for the gifted program. They're in that classroom. So in elementary, what she was referencing earlier, they've called them the fillers, because we can't have a class of 6 GT kids and be done with it. We have to put other kids in the class, and I think that's where that name came about years ago. I don't know, can't speak to it. But sometimes in elementary, by the time you get to 4th and 5th grade, it's a pretty pure homogeneous grouping of kids, because a lot of them at that point in time have passed that test, so they all have an eligibility. But when you hit middle school and you've got a lot more kids, the cluster model is still in effect, but they're not all GT kids, with the exception of the GT Academy at Quail Valley. Typically, those kids all have the eligibility.
Right. I'd be excited to see more info in the coming months.
We're
I
very
guess.
excited about the GT program evaluation, and we're very excited about pre-AP and AP and where we're going with that. And as they mentioned, our advanced academics coordinator is hard at work helping us with curriculum, because as we disclosed earlier, with the district audit findings as well as the AP diagnostic, we have huge deficits. We didn't have curriculum in place, if you will. So we're feverishly writing curriculum, and I plan to include an update in the quarterly report for the audit in January to give you a status of where we are on the different content areas. Now, what we couldn't control is the state came in and revised the TEKS, so we started over with math, and we're going to make a few adjustments with that. But we're making a lot of headway and a lot of training. And if you'll recall, with the revision of EIAR, we changed the regulations so that our AP teachers are now required to reteach and retest our students. And we're trying to help them embrace that. That was a huge paradigm shift, because they're still just children, and even though they're very gifted, very bright, very capable, they still need that opportunity to learn from their mistakes and to be given that second chance and to go deeper. And I agree with you, going fast and doing more work is not appropriate. It's depth and complexity, and sometimes actually going slower. So behind the scenes, we're working very hard on that and trying to prepare our teachers, giving them the strategies, the tools, the professional development, the ongoing support. So there's a lot of work underway and still a lot of opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
We just, we had planned on the program evaluation for gifted being next year, since we're working on bilingual ELL and special education will encompass probably about 18 months. But we had an opportunity to partner with Rice University and some of their graduate students, and they're going to be doing some deep diving on our program with data and so forth. And so we're kind of front-loading that because of that opportunity. And with the differentiated instruction, the state puts out a model that is an exemplary model, and they specify what those factors are. And when we look at our model, we know that we fall short in many of those areas and have some room to grow. And by students, both GT and high-achieving students who are not GT, I won't use the term fillers. At any rate, when we think of that, one of the things that the state stresses is important to GT education is project-based learning and opportunities for them to apply their learning at a deeper level, where in an area of their identification and with their interest, so that they can do some independent or group work at a different level, applying their learning at a higher level. And that's what we'll be looking at, helping teachers move toward that, rather than you sign up for GT for pre-AP and that is the GT, because that causes the gatekeeping and the matrix and so forth that Ms. Chasson was talking about. And I don't know, I think this thing hates me.
I just want to say that the state has a whole list of state numbers and PEMS numbers for the courses that Dr. Hill's talking about, ISM, and they're specifically for gifted kids. ISM stands for Independent Study Mentorship, where they're actually applying. We're not doing that, so we're not there yet with our gifted program.
All right, thank you, ladies. Mr. Verdeen, you have some questions?
And I just had a comment. I wanted to thank you for the presentation. Page 15, the district AP performance disaggregated by campus, to me was just a really telling slide. And it's just amazing to look at, and I think that'll be, in my opinion, a great tool going forward to measure improvement. I just wanted to make that comment, so.
Thank you, Mr. Verdeen. I have a question about that slide, actually. So how does the number of AP course offerings vary by campus? So, I mean, there's kind of a range there, and maybe some of the availability of the AP courses, there's a range of that also. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. Actually, when I said that we have to do our own data, because College Board doesn't share files for students. This is kind of what the charts look like that I think we gave to you all, I believe.
Right,
And
some
so-
time back.
Right, so let's just look at, let's pick one. Let's pick Marshall High School, for example. Let's see, where is Marshall High School? Okay, Marshall High School offered world history and U.S. history and government and economics. No physics. They offered English 3 AP, English 4 AP, and 4 students in calculus, 1 year and 17 this year. That's it. We had a smidgen in chemistry, but there's a lot of blanks, you know, where we're not offering courses. So when you look at this, if there's a
No
blank, then
math?
it's-
Dr., excuse me, no math, no calculus?
they have, Marshall High School has calculus right here. Okay, let's see. So
Or
Marshall.
statistics?
Marshall High School has, this year, has 17 students in calculus. Last year, they had 12, but none of them took the exam. And the year before that, they had 18, and 4 took the exam. So on these charts that are handmade, which is what we had to do to kind of fill in all that data, you will see that, yes, you're absolutely correct. Not every campus offers this, everything. And of course, Willow Ridge, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I
So
mean,
you're
that-
saying there's 18 kids in a calculus class, an AB calculus or BC calculus,
It's
It's AB.
AB.
AB, and nobody's
wasn't
taking the
a-
exam?
In 2012, 18 kids were in the calculus and 4 took the exam. Last year in 12, year before, 2 years ago, 18 and 4 took the exam. Then it was 12, nobody took the exam. And then in May of 2014, 18 were in the class, 17 took the exam. So that
Okay,
was
so
good.
that's much better.
Yeah,
That's a very positive thing.
Yes, that's much better.
it is.
So what are,
Making progress, but, you know, it's going to take time to get that culture change, especially if indeed, because I don't know, I haven't been out there, and there are teachers that tell kids not to take the exam, then we need to look at those things.
right, so that would be my next question, is what are some of the barriers you think there are to these kids taking the exams? If we've got kids in the classes, it seems like we have kids in the classes not taking the exam. We have 2 problems, right? Kids in the classes not taking the exam, kids not in the classes for the first part, in the first place. So I heard you speak a little bit to kids not being in the classes, and you're sort of doing some one-on-one guidance with them and encouraging them and sort of recruiting. You've got a point person on that. But what about the other part, where you've got the kids in the class, they're not taking the exam?
Well,
Why do you
there's,
think that's happening?
yes, there's several things going on there, and one is, you know, some kids really maybe going to an institution that doesn't accept, you know, the AP course, so they're not going to go through the exam. That could be one thing. Another one could be they're discouraged by the teacher to take the exam. It just, you know, people say money, but I'm not. There was one year where the state did away with the subsidy that they had, and the exams were going to cost like $55 per student, but that was 1 year, which was about 2 years ago. Now it's about $21 or $25 per exam, so I don't think that that's a big deterrent.
I think it costs $90 to take an exam.
Well, if you're on free and reduced,
Oh, if you're on free and reduced.
yes.
So if you sign up, okay.
And it's not just free and reduced. Let me kind of back off on that. College Board allows the counselors, that's why it's very important for them to work very closely with the students. If they know of some need, they know the student personally of some need, even if they're not on the free and reduced lunch, the counselor can sign a waiver for that, and that is maybe a parent just filed for bankruptcy, so they haven't been on free and reduced lunch, or they've had something happen in that family, so they are eligible. It is at their professional discretion to sign that free and reduced lunch form. So it does cost $90 per exam for most of us.
Right.
But I can honestly tell you that, you know, and I think Dr. Whitbeck and I were talking about her daughter, whether she's taken the exams or not, and I'll address it, but my son took a lot of AP courses in high school. His junior year, he took the exams. His senior year, he refused. It was a knockout, drag-out fight between us, and he kept saying I was ruining his life. But anyway, he got over it. But the reason was that he was going to an academy, and the academies do not accept AP exams. So he just said, why are you making me sit through that? Why are you paying for that? I said, for the experience, which he thought was kind of silly, but, that happens too. So, and I know Dr. Whitbeck has said that her daughter, same thing, if the college isn't going to accept it, they're not going to.
Okay, and I would just say too that $90 plus $90 plus $90 adds up a lot. That's a significant amount of money for.
Yeah, and I think it's some of our families that they don't qualify for free and reduced lunch, and they're kind of in that middle range that those exams really do add up, and we're looking at,
Absolutely.
$300, $400, $500, and so those are the students that I think it is a barrier for.
And if you have multiple children,
Yes.
then it's another barrier. So I'm just mentioning that because, I've watched the pendulum swing all around, and the district's going to pay for everything, and you're going to have to take the exam. All these things have happened, so just when we're thinking about this, let's think about what the barriers are so that we can reduce those, or at least acknowledge them, and communicate and have the kids help communicate about what those barriers might be in a real way that's, that's helping kids in the end.
But we definitely need to, I think the most important thing about the exams, and we've brought this forth to the board before, is to do it by discipline or by core, like 1 year pay for all the English, and then the next year the math, and then, because we really need to use it as a tool to find out whether we're really teaching what we need to be teaching in those classes.
Well, but then when you rotate it like that, there's only certain years that you're doing certain, kids only take U.S. history in their junior year, for example. Right. So if you're on the math rotation, then it doesn't do the history kids any good. Right. And then next year they're taking the advanced math, take the math AP, right. And they're off cycle. So you have to be careful about the rotation. But I agree, some type of scheme, if that can be worked out, I think that's good. I have a couple other questions. When you were talking about the SAT and the number of kids that took the SAT, you said I think there were 3,800 SAT. Was that students that took the SAT or attempts in Fort Bend ISD at the SAT? Some students taking it multiple times. Do you know? And you said roughly 1,700 ACT attempts.
Right,
is that
yeah.
Number of students or attempts, total attempts?
So what they give us each year is for the class. So the class of 2014, these are how many attempts at the SAT. So some of these students took it multiple times. So they just tracked the class though, and so each year we get the class of the data from the graduating class, and so they could have taken it multiple times. Okay,
so that, I don't know how many seniors were there total in the class of 2014 or 2013. It was about 5,000, 5,500, something like that. So we don't really know what percentage of our kids are taking the SAT or the ACT. We only know, but maybe that's in your hand data also. I'm just curious because that's interesting. I also think you might find.
Yeah, we can look into that one.
Excuse me. I also think you might. I would like to think the class. The class that's this year's graduating seniors had the PSAT paid for their sophomore year, the PSAT paid for their junior year, and now that would be their SAT year, their senior year. So I'll be curious to know how many of those kids, after having 2 paid for attempts at the PSAT, built confidence enough to take the SAT, and if there's a difference in the number of kids. But again, the SAT is an expensive test, and if if that's a barrier, then that might be a barrier. I just think perhaps there's some real life conversations that need to be happening with the CCR advisors and the counselors to make sure that this, that we're meeting the needs of all the kids.
Point well taken.
Especially if there are kids who are having trouble making this a priority, or it's not culturally important to them to participate in these exams, which it seems pretty clear that we have some of that going on. So, all right, Mr. Rosenthal, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Couple questions. We've seemed to discuss a lot about AP participation and participation in the actual AP test. But I think we need to also include the success in those tests when we look at these things. You do have one chart that shows that, but a lot of it is, your goals seem to be how many kids can we get to participate in at least taking the test, but then it kind of seems like it stops. So, and then on this, going back to this, you can either use that or the one before it. And you may have already done this in the past, but is there any way you can add an additional column of the number of AP courses offered at each one of these campuses, just so we can kind of see that?
Absolutely, yeah. That's easy to do.
Okay.
We'll get that report to you and send it in the weekly updates.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Sure. I wanted to say something real
Oh,
quick.
sorry, Mr. Reardon, go ahead.
Going back, and I'll leave this alone, when we're talking about the cost of the test, when these families are in survival mode, even if it was $10 or $20, I just don't think it's a priority for these families. And until we break that mold, we're going to continue to see little participation in these tests. Whatever we do, I think it's crucial that we find consistency in what we do. If not, find a way for deserving students to be able to take the exam, some type of avenue, but that's crucial. I just don't see how we'll to see any participation being all over the place like that. So I don't know how to do that, but.
Well, Mr. Reardon, I think that's a good point, and I would comment that we have to prioritize where we're going to spend our funds, because advanced placement tests, AP tests, are one avenue where we could spend funds, but we might want to spend funds in the dual credit arena. That might be a better use, might meet the needs of a different group of students. It wouldn't necessarily be able to track nice and neatly like this does, but it still might meet some students' needs. It becomes a funding priority of what do we want to pay for.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I'm not saying to pay for it for them, but there has to be consistency in some way, so at least they know. Or
Right, and if you look in the affluent neighborhoods, there's a lot of AP tests being taken. In the non-affluent neighborhoods, there aren't. So, I mean,
Yeah, and I can also say that this is something that we're working on as far as a funding source to help pay for this. And without, an agreement in hand, but the George Foundation has expressed interest, and we've met with them about this, in providing some additional funds for students of need that, want to take one test or multiple tests. And that we'd have and I think it's a great point that we need to have a consistent criteria to how we're going to award that money. But I think that that's something that's definitely on our radar. If we're going to have an emphasis on equity and access, we need to fund it and back it with funding. So.
Absolutely, and you want to encourage kids to continue to improve and to try. And I think I heard Dr. Garcia saying one of the things was to have kids try something a little bit out of their comfort zone and push themselves academically. And if that's what we want, certainly this testing would be the next step of that. And I'm not necessarily a big proponent of the testing, but we have to prioritize. Well, what are we trying to do? What do we want it to look like in the end? What are we trying to get it to look like? And this chart right here is very sad to me. We have over 2,000 kids at one school getting 3, 4s, and 5s on an AP exam, and 6 at another school. That's ridiculous. And it's very upsetting. So anyway.
I would just add one thing, as we're talking about funding and testing. I'm not really a big proponent of more testing either, but I do it depends on what the testing is used for. So formatively, I like the idea of seeing, what kids are getting from these classes. I mean, from a curriculum perspective, and what are we teaching, and are we preparing them for college or careers? I like that aspect of it. So when we're looking at funding and where we're going to be putting dollars, if we're looking at testing for formative purposes and helping the kids and helping the teachers and for instructional purposes, as you guys discussed, I do like that aspect of it. and giving these kids the opportunity to, like Ms. James said, to see where they are and then see, continuously improve, see if they can grow. I do like that aspect of it.
And also just to add to that, we had over 7,000 exams in Fort Bend ISD that scored 3 or higher. And if you think about the college credit and the cost of college credit, like how many millions of dollars our families saved by getting those credits. So the AP exams, yes, it is another test, but it also has a huge value for students being awarded college credit.
Well, and maybe we have to look at these students and whether or not they see themselves as college bound. I mean, that may impact whether or not kids are actually taking this. I mean, they don't care to spend the $20 or $90 if they don't see themselves as college bound, and that credit doesn't make any difference to them. So
Right.
as we're implementing House Bill 5 and giving these endorsements and pathways and trying to get kids to see where their path is going to be, maybe we can use that to, help counsel our kids, and as they see their futures taking shape, it may impact whether or not they make a decision to take a test like this. So
That's an interesting idea, to encourage an AP exam in their area of their pathway, to sort of align it in that regard, or an AP exam, or an industry certification test, or whatever it might be.
right.
Maybe there's some alignment that can sort of guide us to help us to know, help kids to know, have some endpoint, a goal.
Right, then you're targeting what their choice is, and
Right.
and not penalizing them. I mean, they may want to take the AP class in order to get that sort of rigor, but it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be college bound at the end of it. And it just depends. I think it depends on the student. So maybe digging a little deeper with these pathways will help us.
Excellent idea. And I haven't given any thought, but if we pay for industry certifications, we certainly can look at something like that too.
Exactly.
And maybe over the course of time, over the course of their 4 years, there's, that's part of it. There's one exam in there for them to at least attempt it.
Well, it gives kids another opportunity to be successful in what it is they're interested in. It doesn't necessarily have to be these college type, readiness type tests. So they still have a target, still have something to work for, and it's going to actually enable them after high school to do whatever it is they choose to do.
And one last thing, districts that do pay for the AP exams for everyone, they normally have a policy that if you don't take the exam, you don't get the weighted points. So it does encourage us, the true kids who really who are in there because they really want to take that class, and they're not just there to get the points.
I don't know.
Right, well, it becomes.
It's for another day.
Yes,
It's
it's a
another
whole nother
conversation.
conversation.
It's a bridge too far.
Well, I think I would conclude by saying, I think even just looking at the vast disparity that Mrs. James pointed out between the most and the least, even in the middle and even on the other slides, you could see, even our white student group, it's right down there comparable to our Hispanic and African American student groups. So we have room for growth in all student groups, really, and at all schools. So that's why I think the systemic approach is most critical, because there's many schools up there that are very large high schools that are considered to be high-performing high schools that you would expect to have many more exams than they have. So there's some just homework we need to do, and I think Lupita and Steve are doing a great job along with their teams, and certainly the campus staff are working very hard on this as well, because this is another thing that takes time and an investment of energy and resources, but I think everyone is understanding the value, and they're committed to the task.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Shields and Dr. Garcia. Thanks for bringing us all this data. It's very informative, and we appreciate your effort in putting it all together for us and answering our questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Dupree, do we have?
Yes, ma'am. We have one more report this evening. We have 2 schools that we're going to hear from. We've got Willow Ridge High School earned, improvement required status in the 2013-14 school year testing. So they have to present a report that the board has to approve based on their campus improvement plan. And that plan has been submitted to TEA, but now the board needs to formally approve it. Briargate Elementary was in improvement required last year, and based on their 13-14 scores, they are actually implementing the second year of the plan, but they came out of improvement required. So But they are required, because they were last year, they're required to present this year and just follow up on their report. So this evening, we have several folks, and you all should probably go ahead and come on over. Jan Moore is our Director of Accountability. Dr. Sochi Rodriguez is the Assistant Superintendent responsible for both of these schools. Hilda Arnold is the new principal at Briargate, and then, of course, Joseph Chandler is the principal at Willow Ridge High School, and they're going to present their reports to you this evening. So I'll turn it over to Jan Moore.
All righty. Thank you, President James, Dr. Dupree, members of the board, members of the audience. It's a pleasure to be with you again. State and federal accountability systems are really kind of a piece of work. However, if you don't meet the standard, there are things that have to be done. And so in the last couple of years, our systems have merged together, and we have merged away from those 4 words, exemplary, recognized, acceptable, and not acceptable, to the really 2 categories, met standard or improvement required. Fort Bend had last year 1 campus, thank you, that did not meet standard, and this year we had 1 that did not meet standard. They're required to participate in the Texas Accountability Intervention System, which is a very systemic process where they look at their data, they look at the needs assessment, and they really dig in and look at what was the root cause. Why did this happen? Not just quickly jumping to how can we fix it, but how did we end up here? And then they have to write a 2-year improvement plan, and that improvement plan is filed with TEA. We're in compliance with that. We've done that. And then they are monitored by both the district and TEA. That monitoring takes the place in our district with professional service providers. Those have been hired, and we have 1 assigned to work with Briargate Elementary and 1 assigned to work with Willow Ridge. So this evening, we're going to share Briargate's 2nd year. We're pleased to tell you they met standard last year, but it's a 2-year process. And in that interim, we have a new principal. We have an edited plan, and Dr. Hilda Arnold is going to share with you what she's going to do to keep that campus where they need to be. Following that, Joe Chandler, the principal at Willow Ridge, will share his plan. He is moving into year 1 of a 2-year plan. And then we will circle back around with asking your approval of those plans on our December 15th meeting. Tonight, we're just going to share the stories behind those plans. The actual plans themselves will come to you this week with a memo. You'll be able to read those. And that will proceed after we just share what we're going to do tonight. The deadline to get these plans to TEA was very early, and TEA didn't exactly give us some of the guidance documents and the new template this year until kind of late in the game, and so we're trying to get those in a real good readable format for you to get this week. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our PSPs, if they are here. Dr. Molly Kudrow is working with Briargate Elementary, and Lori Elliott is assigned to work with Willow Ridge High School, and I don't believe she could be with us this evening. So I will turn the microphone over now to Hilda Arnold, who will talk to you about Briargate.
Good evening, Dr. Dupree. There we go. Good evening, Dr. Dupree, President James, and Board of Trustees. Before I share our plan, I do want to share our index report, our accountability report for last year. Briargate, as Dr. Moore mentioned, did meet the standard in all 4 indexes, but I do want to share where we fall in all of those 4 indexes and what the target score is and where Briargate fell as far as meeting that standard. So for Index 1, for student achievement, the target score was 55 and Briargate scored 56 on Index 1. So as you can see, we did meet standard, but there is a lot of work to be done so that we can continue to be out of needs improvement for year 2. For Index 2, which looks at student progress, the target score was 33 and Briargate scored 40 on Index 2. And so that measures student growth from year to year on STAR. For Index 3, which is closing their performance gap, the target score was 28 and Briargate scored 30 on Index 3. Again, this emphasizes advanced academic achievement of the economically disadvantaged student groups and the lowest performing ethnic student groups. So for Briargate, the two lowest performing groups are African American and economically disadvantaged students. For Index 4, which is our post-secondary readiness, that is preparing our students for high school and the importance of earning a high school diploma that prepares students for college, the workforce, job training programs, and or the military. So the target score for Index 4 was 12, and Briargate scored 20 for Index 4. So I'm going to share our plan to keep Briargate out of needs improvement and some of our goals and what we are doing in the classrooms. For science, our goal for science is by the end of 2014 school year, students identified as economically disadvantaged will meet Phase 1 satisfactory standards with an increase of 10% and demonstrate a 5% increase in meeting the advanced standard for science. We will do labs that are going to be conducted or that are being conducted twice a week. We want that hands-on experiences for students, and all of this is being documented through walkthroughs when we come into the classrooms and we see the actual hands-on experiences happening in the classrooms. This is also documented in teachers' lesson plans as well. For small group instruction that is taking place at least twice a week, we're trying to move away from whole group instruction to small group instruction. When teachers have their students, a group of 3 or 4 right in front of them, they are able to better see where the disconnect is or where children are having trouble and where that disconnect is, and they're able to better assist them. When you continue to have that whole group instruction, sometimes we lose some of our students in that instruction piece, and we also have some of our students that constantly raise their hand, and they're the ones that want to participate because they know the answers, and then some of our students are lost in that shuffle. But through that small group instruction, teachers have them close to them, and they're able to see where they can help the students best. We also have science district helping teachers that provide weekly support to our teachers. Jimmy Thomas visits our campus once a week, and he supports our teachers by doing observations, giving them feedback. He also co-teaches with our teachers and plans with our teachers as well. We have created checkpoints, common assessments to monitor and track student progress to guide our instruction. Our goals for math. Again, our SMART goal is that by the end of 2014-15 school year, students identified as economically disadvantaged will meet Phase 1 satisfactory standards with an increase of 10% and demonstrate a 5% increase in meeting the advanced standard for math. Again, we're going back to that small group instruction taking place a couple of times a week, twice a week at least. And again, this is to provide the students better help and have the teachers being able to assist students. Our campus specialists are also in classrooms supporting that small group instruction. Our specialists have developed schedules to push into classrooms versus pulling out the students from the classrooms. When we pull out students from classrooms are missing out on that core instruction. And so when the specialists push in, they still have the benefit of hearing the teacher as well, and then working and having that support from the specialists. After-school tutorials and Saturday camps have also been put in place. We want to make sure that we have that extra support for students after school, and some of our students have tutorials in the mornings, and we have also developed Saturday camps for our students, and our CBL team has decided on what Saturdays to hold those Saturday tutorials. Some of the other things that we're using for math to help instruction is Think Through Math and Reflex Math. We also have developed some STAR STEM questions during lunch. So students get to answer some of these questions where they get to show their strategies, and if the answer is correct, they get their name put in a kind of in a drawing to win prizes. So they're constantly practicing, their strategies and constantly just practicing to get better. For our writing goals, by the end of 2014 school year, again, we are trying to meet Phase 1 satisfactory standards with an increase of 10% and demonstrate a 5% increase in meeting the advanced standard for writing. Some of the things that we're doing for writing is implementing writing centers in ELA classrooms. We want to make sure that we are seeing students have that balanced literacy, and that balanced literacy is taking place in the classrooms. We have also developed instructional schedules so that teachers have a set time where this is going to be sacred for balanced literacy, whether it's independent reading or whether they're doing guided reading and pulling those small groups. We also have developed school-wide writing days that will occur each 9 weeks, and this is just an additional time for students to write and just have that opportunity to get more writing in the school day. Again, the days have been designated by the CBLT, and we have decided once each 9 weeks we will have that campus-wide writing. Our specialists will develop the prompt, and on that day, students will be expected to write about that prompt, and rubrics will be developed so that teachers can score that writing prompt. And again, that information and that data will be used to drive our instruction. Last but not least, our Reading ELA District Helping Teacher provides weekly support. Again, our helping teachers come in and observe, they give feedback, they model lessons for teachers, and they are also planning with teachers as well. Our reading goal is similar to our writing and math goals. We want to increase by 10% and demonstrate a 5% increase in meeting the advanced standards for reading. Again, we're going back to that small group instruction. We have developed guided reading binders to track student progress, to track their levels, to track data on performance. We look at these binders probably about monthly to see how students are progressing. When we meet with our PSP, this is information that we share with them, and we bring these artifacts in so that we can look through and see how students are progressing. Again, our specialists have developed intervention schedules to push into the classrooms versus pulling out students from the classroom. We're also using iStations in the classroom, and Dr. Eggman works with teachers weekly on reading and writing strategy, and she observes and gives feedback as well. And again, we have developed STAR STEM questions during the lunchtime for students to answer and enter their names into winning a prize at the end of the week. Our last goal has to do with discipline. By the end of 2014-15 school year, student referrals will decrease by 30% from last year. Some of the things that we are doing to make sure that this is happening is we are at Capturing Kids' Heart School, and Capturing Kids' Heart will be evident in 100% of the classrooms. That is part of our Briargate Elementary walkthrough. So when we walk into classrooms, we expect to see evidence of capturing kids' hearts, and that is anything from the social contract, teachers talking and referencing back to the social contract as well. Another thing that we're doing at Briargate is Jaguar Bucks will be used for classroom incentives, and teachers give Jaguar Bucks. It could be for good behavior. It could be for being star students, for modeling in the classroom and in the hallways, the expectations that we have at Briargate. And so they earn Jaguar Bucks that they can in turn use in the classroom for incentives. So each teacher has kind of like a little treasure chest where they can come in and cash in their Jaguar Bucks. One of the other things that we also have is Helping Us Grow Stronger. We call that HUGS. And this is a mentor program designed for students that need additional social support. So we asked staff members at Briargate to volunteer to be mentors for students. And so what we do is our first time we meet with our mentees, we're going to develop little matching bracelets with them. And then we have a couple of questions that we developed to kind of get to know, kind of like a getting to know you, and so that we can serve as positive role models for the students. So some of the things that we emphasize is following through on expectations and consequences in the classroom, in the hallways, and an organization by the name of Elves and More has donated bikes for our students if they make the sufficient progress in reading, behavior, and attendance. And so when they came to me and they said, Dr. Arnold, we're going to donate a bike for every student, I almost fell off of my chair because typically when people donate things, it's 3 or 4, but they said, we have a bike for every student on your campus. This is an opportunity for them to earn a bike. And all they have to do is show progress in reading through their reading levels and show that they're not going to be behavior issues and that they come to school every day. So to me, that sounded pretty amazing. So we jumped on that opportunity, and on December 17th, Elves and More will be delivering over 420 bikes to our students because they have either met their reading goal, have not had any discipline referrals, or they have good attendance at school. So this is definitely something that has helped us along with capturing kids' hearts. So a lot of things that we are doing and implementing and monitoring. Are there any questions that I can answer for you at this time?
Mr. Rosenthal?
Yeah, quick question. How many students typically show up at your Saturday camps?
The first Saturday camp that we will have will be in January.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Thank you, Dr. Arnold.
Thank you.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here to address you guys tonight. I have a lot to say. I'm going to try to keep it as narrow as possible. Okay. If you take a look at our indexes, look at the right place here. If you take a look at our indexes, it's really, I'm going to hone in on index number 4, the post-secondary readiness. The overall index total for the state was at 57. Willow Ridge was around 55, just below that goal. If you get a little bit deeper into the process and look at the goals, I'm going to talk real broadly for a second, it really centers on the front line of instruction. You're going to hear me kind of spiral that back often to talk about the front line of instruction with a very clear emphasis on improvement, okay? And obviously it's kind of a two-front challenge. It's just not just meeting the floor or meeting the minimum expectation, but it's also very much what, like Dr. Garcia was in her presentation tonight, reaching those upper levels. So it's very refreshing to hear those conversations that they're having at the district level, and rest assured they're bleeding down to the campus also. Those same discussions on increasing rigor and complexity is prevalent in our campus as well. So thank you. If you take a look at the advanced level of ELA 1 and ELA 2, which is a significant challenge for us, we want to reach, make sure we're okay. Everybody hear me all right? I want to make sure that with ELA 1 and ELA 2, that we are meeting monthly on horizontal and vertical planning, which allows, for example, English 1 upper level classes to meet with those level 2 classes to ensure that alignment is there. Also, when they meet horizontally, to ensure that the common planning piece is solid and that it's effective. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about that common planning piece. Because when, like I say, when staff get together around a table and they make those decisions, only achievement gets better. And that's our philosophy at Willow Ridge, and that's what we're working towards. Again, if you look at also the first 2 goals, one deals with ELA and the second goal deals with Algebra 1. Again, reaching that advanced level performance. To keep it simple, they're both doing very much the same type work, but it is the emphasis on complexity along with rigor and making sure that we're making data-driven decisions, looking at things like our common formative assessments, our benchmark assessments, our benchmark assessments that we, or our common formative assessments that we do monthly inside the district or inside the campus. If you take a look at our third goal, which is 60% of all students will meet or exceed the level 2 performance standard on 2 or more STAR end-of-course exams. This is we get deeper into the PLC process, and I want to thank you for the support last spring. When you guys reached out to this campus and say, what do you need? I said, I need additional staffing. Well, we could build an effective infrastructure for the PLC model, where you have one common planning period, and then also a common, just a regular conference period. Embedded inside that PLC piece is where teachers are making that data-driven decisions and really intense planning. That's driven by administration, also the teachers, and the hope is where it's becoming less administrative driven in that side of the PLCs, it becomes more teacher driven. It takes time and work in the process. But thanks to you guys, we do have that infrastructure now. And there's evidence, if you take a look at some of our common assessments that we see in Algebra 1 right now, I want to nod my hat to that right now, the work that they're doing there. There's evidence that PLC piece work and that investment's paying off. Also a part of that is with the embedded PD piece. With our instructional coach, and I'm going to say AVID also, getting teachers to come together for that job-embedded PD piece where, for example, on Mondays, all the ELA 1 team may come in where they look at structures and discipline inside the classroom, or how to build effective questions to raise a level of rigor inside of the classroom. How do we build those questions? How are we building assessments? Are they effective assessments? And everything really, the other piece of it really, everything goes back to walkthroughs. Are we seeing the evidence inside the classroom? That's a huge piece of the puzzle is, are we inspecting, how's the old saying go, are we inspecting what we expect? So that's the emphasis that we're working towards. We have a common form that we use on our iPads with CWTs. We look at those weekly, we monitor those weekly. And it's safe feedback for teachers in the CWTs. It's not like PDAS. It's more of a coaching piece for teachers where they can say, this is our weak areas. How do you grow? How do you become better? And what I'm finding just throughout the whole process for the campus is about getting better. From the principal, how do I become a better principal, to the teachers, to the custodial staff, to the cafeteria workers, how do we get better at what we do? How do we become more effective? That's the question I keep asking myself as we get deeper into school improvement. If you take a look at really the other part of Index 4, you need to realize where our weakness is it's a complex index. It encompasses everything from instruction all the way down to systems, how we monitor students' transcripts. Are we making the right decisions for kids based on those transcripts? Are we getting the right transcripts? And when we do, if there is an error, how do we correct that? Or is it a matter of when a child gets off track, how do we get them to graduate in on time? So really all pieces of the school, it's all connected. It's a moving part. And we're under the microscope from how we do the audits, to how the decisions we're making for kids, tracking their progress, and asking that question, how do we get better? So we want to increase that 4-year graduation plan, the graduation rate. We want to increase that. It's acceptable, but we want to compare to the rest of the district. We would like to increase that at a higher level, along with, like I say, more specific on the tutorials and the increased assistance. As far as The other piece of that, we kind of talked about credit recovery. 88% of 2015 graduates complete the requirements of the recommended or distinguished high school plan or opt into the Foundation Plus or distinguished high school programs. That's the other piece of the puzzle for Index 4 that we're challenged to improve upon. With Ingenuity, or what we call O-Lab on campus, students that have fallen behind or have transferred in that need to receive a credit, we have a number of foreign students moving in. This is an option possible. Also, some of the options that you may have heard of is the face-to-face credit recovery that we look at during the holidays. And just really, from our highest child down to the lowest performing child on the campus, we need to make sure that we're providing supports at all levels. Avid's a big piece of that. From our higher end kids, and also the interventions, the intense interventions that we do on weekends, the credit recovery that we just did this past weekend to ensure that all kids are getting those credits they need to move on or to reach towards graduation. I think to summarize, I'm going to go back to what I said a few minutes ago. It's a two-front challenge. You've got to meet the high-end student. You have to meet those needs. It's evident. You can look in our scores here. James is not at me there. It's evident. We have work to do at the high end and to meet that floor too. Rest assured, we understand the importance of that. My team's here, around me and with me. We're here to help the kids. That's our number one goal. That's what we're going to do. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. I'm excited that you're excited about helping every kid. Who has a question? Trustees have questions? Mr. Rice?
Thank you. Mr. Chandler, you had a comment on there. I see that Willow Ridge met the performance in all categories except for the post-secondary readiness. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so the state is at 57% and Willow Ridge was at 55%?
Yes.
So that's why we're in this mode?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. All right.
And it's a combination of all those areas that we talked about. I mean, the main thing is really the improvement of instruction. That has to occur on these, especially on this goal.
How is post-secondary readiness measured?
It's measured through graduation rate. It's measured through kids' scores overall. For example, if you take a look at the 9th grade level, that's where a lot of your tests take place. Do all those kids pass the first time they take that exam? There's evidence in our data to show that, no, we need to improve that level of performance. So it's graduation rate. It's looking at the front line of instruction. It's taking a look at the upper levels, the commended levels, which our commended levels are low, none above 3%. So, like I say, it's a complex. Index 4 is probably the most complex of each of the indexes. And really, you have to look at every facet of the school. You just can't isolate and say, let's just look at test scores. Well, test scores are part of that. Well, let's look at the processes and how we're placing kids. Are we doing the right things for kids, which is the decisions we make as far as classes goes, the counseling. It's everybody's under the microscope with this Index 4 as far as improvement goes. Does that answer your question?
It kind of does. I get it. It's complicated, and it involves graduation rate and a number of factors. So it's pervasive through the system. So I didn't mean to interrupt Mr. Rice, who was...
No, that's okay. I just want to thank you, Mr. Chandler, for your commitment to our kids and for your team being here tonight. Let us know what else we can do to support you.
And can address Grant's question.
Yeah, I think when we say index 4 is complex, it measures things that we haven't really looked at in its entirety before. Index 4 this year for high schools looked different than it did last year. We're looking at certainly graduation rate and graduation type. You noticed on here the recommended,
Yes.
okay, that's
Versus
kind of a
minimum.
new measure in our accountability system. When you look at advanced performance, I'll be blunt. Our previous accountability systems really looked at passing the test, which was much more of a minimum. Now we're holding kids and campuses, principals, accountable for every kid, no matter where they are, grows a year every year. So we don't have the luxury any longer of only looking at a targeted set of kids that are almost there. We just got to get them over the bar. That's a very different arena to guide a school. And I think when we've met with Joe, looking at, so how are you getting your kids that already pass or do well to do better, to get at that advanced level? Those are the kinds of scores on those tests that they're looking at for that advanced academic and for being ready. We've looked at those before. I've shared those numbers with you in AEIS or TAPR reports, but now they're factored into our accountability system as well. So we're having to look deeper. We're having to look more rigorously at, when we peel back the layers of the onion, what is the real root cause? And it sounds very much like what he said. It's first-time instruction in the classroom. We can no longer just teach to pass that minimum score on a test. And that's a journey every teacher in this district is making. And so that's why we say Index 4 is a little more complex, because not all of those factors have played in there every year until this year. Now, and we expect those things to, our accountability system is still evolving, so we continue to look at different things that we're measured by.
Thank you for that explanation. Mrs. Hassan.
Thank you. I'm really glad to hear you guys talk about continuous growth and raising the bar and targeting all children for growth. I think that that's exactly where we need to be at all of our schools. So I commend you for that and for the plan you've put together. I just have a couple of questions. I heard you say two things that stood out to me, that one of the reasons that you guys feel like we're here is graduation rate. So is mentoring a part of this plan? Is that something that you implement at Willow Ridge currently?
As far as outside resources, is it?
Either way, and the reason that I ask is because I went to a presentation that talked about mentoring kids especially through high school, those that may be underperforming, those that may be in lower socioeconomic, or for various reasons. And so it seems to me, and I could be wrong, that maybe if we're looking at graduation rate, that perhaps some of that has to do with teaming kids up with adults, whether it's in school, outside of school, to help them get through not just academically, but maybe some of the social things that they deal with as well.
And you're exactly right on it. I mean, mentoring is a huge piece. Do we have a formalized program? This time we don't. I will say this, is that a lot of the work that we're doing really is focusing on the 9th grade level this year, creating kind of, I guess, small schools within schools, to be honest with you. They're in a smaller part of the building where we can nurture those kids. They don't have the influence of seniors. Not saying that seniors are bad influence, but it allows them to kind of grow into the building and to grow into themselves academically. And it does allow us to get deeper into working with their emotions.
Okay. Yeah, and well, that's good to hear, because it sounds like that if the ninth graders are taking the test coming in, and maybe that affects scores, that you're nurturing them a little bit and giving them that closer instruction. That might be something that I'd like to see, just that mentoring piece of it, especially if you're getting them at 9th grade and maybe can carry that through the 4 years. I've been part of a program that does that, and seen a lot of success in it, and so that was just one of the questions I had. The other thing I heard you say is improvement in instruction. And so I see that on slide 14, you talk about the tutorials and the pullouts and the intense assistance. Does that include some of that small group kind of instruction within? I assume that that's maybe what is intense assistance means.
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to try to look at where the deficits of students are. How are we meeting those deficits? We need to do, really, to be honest with you, our focus is that front line of instruction. That's the key piece, is that front line of instruction improvement. At that point in time, if students need that extra assistance, we have a system built outside of the school day to assist with that, where we invite students in either on Saturdays, especially as we get closer to the testing season, where we'll designate some Saturdays where it's very specific targets broken down by objective, teacher recommendations, how we can best assist that student. But again, right now, or the first semester, our focus is how do you improve day to day from writing the objective down to executing the entire lesson cycle.
Are you guys getting good attendance on those Saturday sessions and tutorials?
Yes. I think if you look at the semester, it's grown. I think it's becoming a part of the culture of the campus. I always want more. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm never going to be satisfied with what's there.
Yeah.
I always feel like it could be better.
That might be another area where mentoring could come in if you have that adult that encourages that participation in that area. Just a thought. Thank you very much. Appreciate your dedication, and I too appreciate your excitement about these kids, and thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Toussaint. Mr. Chandler, how many students do you have in the senior class at Willow Ridge High School?
We have probably 320 some kids.
Okay. I'm just wondering, I'm looking at the percentages here that you're shooting for, and I'm thinking about what that is.
Don't quote me exactly on that, but that's just me sitting here real quick.
Okay, well,
Okay.
thank you for giving me that best estimate. And every
Okay.
single one of them is important, and every single one of them wants to graduate in May, so, June, actually.
June.
I would ask, Joe and Hilda, some of your team members have made sacrifices to be with the board this evening. Perhaps you could introduce us,
Sure.
introduce them to us.
I'm going to start with Miss Jackson, my associate principal. Kevin Morrow, my assistant principal. Coach Lazaro, athletic director. His better half, definitely, Miss Lazaro, our math instructional specialist. She's done a phenomenal job. My dean of instruction, Monica Martin, and Miss Hasker in the back with her, who's made a big sacrifice this evening by bringing her child here, and also a big supporter and a good friend of the campus is Miss Collins, sitting in the front.
With me this evening, we have my assistant principal, Portia Dudley. We have my reading specialist, Vanessa Collier. My Title I intervention specialist, Craig Schweitzer. And my math interventionist, Stephanie Ardoin. And we also have our PSP with us today, Molly Cordeau.
Thank you both very much for being here tonight and sharing your goals with us. We appreciate that very much. Thank you, Dr. Moore, for leading that discussion.
Thank you.
Oh, no, it's not it. Now we're headed into closed session, Dr. Dupree. For the purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney on any or all subjects or matters authorized by law, including the purchase of real property and personally identifiable information about a public school student. The board's now convened in closed session.